Welcome back to the 1070 Architecture YouTube show. I am the host here, Bailey Canning, and I am going to be, of course, interviewing and facilitating this conversation with the principal architect of 1070 Architecture, Sean Canning. And just to clarify, since I didn't really think I explained in the first episode, the way this came about was that Sean and I have been working for several years now on his company's marketing strategy. And as a marketing consultant, that is why I'm in the picture here. So that is the arrangement of how things came to be. Otherwise, we have a very jam packed show to be talking about today with the latest economic news and how that's going to be affecting the architecture landscape, specifically in San Diego. But before we get to that, Sean, how are you doing on this Friday morning?
Very good, Billy. Good morning. Thanks for hosting this. I appreciate it.
You got it. All right. So, we're going to be discussing the tariff situation, as I'm sure anyone watching this is well aware, whether or not they want to be watching the news or not. We're going to keep this very high level, very focused on how it's going to impact architecture and construction, specifically within the San Diego region, and how you're going to be advising your clients to go about these types of projects in the first place. It's going to be very apolitical. We're not trying to get into the weeds of that. So, Sean, at a high level, we're going to be looking at a project later on that kind of demonstrates your approach to designing and developing projects in this new economic landscape. But at a high level, as you're, having meetings with clients and prospects these days, how are you advising people to think about their project in relation to these tariffs and the almost certainly higher costs that they're going to incur?
Well, the first thing I want to explain, Billy, is the time frame on a project like this, or any project we work on, whether it be a custom home or an ADU project. It takes us about 2 months to design most projects, 2 months to engineer most projects, and then about 8 months to permit most simple projects. So, at the earliest, if you were to start your project today, you would be building this project a year from today. That's the ideal time frame. It's the shortest time frame. In a discretionary project, you could be building your project 2 years or 3 years from start. There's also ways to delay the permit. So we can complete the permit, you could be ready to build, ready to get the permit issued, and you can have up to 2 years of extensions. So that means when you're ready to build your project, you're actually going to be building your project in a completely different economic landscape than what we have today. So that's the first thing I want to mention. I think a lot of people think things are going a lot faster than they are. And I think the city advertises that they're expediting ADU permits. But in our experience, we're seeing like 1 year minimum from project start to construction start. So I think that's the first thing I should mention. The second thing is, in general, I think the way to combat these tariffs, because we don't exactly know how they're going to land and exactly how they're going to affect the construction cost. But I think the key is rather than form follows function, which you've probably heard before, I think now we're in a situation where form needs to follow finance. There's a couple strategies here to design more simple buildings. First thing I should mention is there is a statistic from National Association of Home Builder which stated that the average construction project is going to increase about $7,500 to $10,000. And if this statistic is true, in the grand scheme of any construction project that we're working on here in San Diego, I mean, that's so minuscule, it's barely going to affect the construction budget at all. But back to simplicity. I think there's a couple strategies here. You want to make sure you're working with an architect who completely understands framing, because the more simple the framing is, the less cost the construction would be. And this has nothing to do with the cost of framing necessarily, but it has to do with the labor involved in framing. So rather than designing these complicated, articulate buildings, we're going to propose in most scenarios that we're going to design more simple, more straightforward buildings. And I don't mean this to say that these are going to be ugly buildings or they're necessarily going to be like minimalist buildings or anything like that. They can be different styles, but we're really going to shoot for an efficiency of framing and then also an efficiency of the MEP. So we're going to want to congregate the plumbing in one area of the house so we don't have extended lengths of plumbing. And the same with your air conditioner. We just want to make sure everything's very efficient, and I think that's going to help drop costs down. We could always layer on complexity later on, but for the time being, I think the strategy needs to be design more simple, more efficient buildings.
Got it. So we can definitely dive deeper into the design adjustments that might need to be made. But before we go forward with timeline, like you were just talking about, would it perhaps make sense? So you talk about the fact that people don't necessarily need to start the construction part until at least a year, and there could be ways
Mhm.
to delay it even further. So maybe should people, maybe they were 3 or 6 months out, 9 months out from starting a project, as long as they have the finances to do it, would it actually make sense to start sooner rather than later, given the fact that if you do believe these materials are going to increase in cost, you could start your project and then the suppliers could secure the materials faster, if that makes sense. There's been people talking about, buying cars now, buying other types of goods before these tariffs
Yeah.
hit. So, what do you think about that?
Well, I think that's what we're seeing going on right now in April 2025. The contractors that are working on the projects that we've already designed, they're ordering all their materials as soon as they can so they can avoid the tariffs. I don't know if that would be a good strategy moving forward because we don't really know when these tariffs are going to kind of like fully hit and increase the construction material cost. But let me give you two examples and explain the difference in timeframes here. So the standard client we get comes into my office and they say, "Hey, I want to build, this custom home and I want to do it as right now, basically." So, like I said earlier, it takes a couple months to design, a couple months to engineer, and then it typically takes about 8 months to permit something like that, as long as it's a ministerial permit rather than a discretionary permit. And then that 8 month period during permitting, we're communicating with the client to say, "Hey, we got this sign off, we got this sign off." And usually the clients at this point are like, let's speed this up. Let's hurry up the permit. I want to get the permit. So it becomes a little bit of a rush. And I think that puts a lot of stress on the client. Definitely puts some stress on us and the development services department. Now, in comparison, if you were to start your project today, design your project today, we'll engineer it, and then we submit for permitting, and then we complete the permit. So all sign offs are completed, and all you have to do is issue the permit so you can legally start your construction project. Well, now we can delay that issuance. So we can push it out another year, and that can allow you to get prepared for the construction project without all the stress. You can use this time to line up a contractor. You can make sure the contractor has availability on his schedule. So I think the latter scenario takes a lot of the stress out of construction, which is inherently a very stressful part of the project.
If you wanted to delay, like you talk about, is that kind of automatic?
Mhm.
Would that be given automatically, or could there be some complications? Just so people know.
Yeah, well, it could be slightly complicated. It's not, maybe complicated is the wrong word. We basically have to reach out before the permit expires and ask for an extension. And Margaret does that in our office. So we track the dates and the expirations of the permits, especially when clients ask us to do this. So we have been doing this in the past where clients want to wait for the right economical situation to build.
Got it. So why don't we talk more about the design aspects here? So obviously, I know you're a huge fan of minimalism when it comes to architecture. I'm a fan of minimalism as well, probably just not as much as you are, but I definitely do agree. I definitely like that design style. And back to your form follows finance statement. Could now be the time to embrace minimalism? Is that what you would recommend to clients in a tasteful way that is obviously maybe not going to be super austere, but is going to be minimalist in a way that reduces the construction costs to account for these tariffs?
Yes and no. If we're talking about the true style of minimalism, like what John Pawson does, for example, those projects are more expensive because it's harder to get things to look very, very minimalist. But if we're talking more generally, could we take a craftsman home and design it in a more minimalist style? Or could we do a modern home and design it closer to a minimalist style where we're reducing maybe extra ornament and extra trim? Maybe we're reducing the bathroom count, or maybe we're planning for future bathrooms so the plumbing is already there. So I wouldn't say the specific style of minimalism is less expensive, but I think you can apply the concepts of minimalism to your project.
I think it's important to say at this moment that just because there's less going on inherently with a more minimalist design doesn't mean that it's going to look cheap or like an IKEA sort of design, even though I do like IKEA. But I think, and this is like a interior design concept that actually, especially when you look at those like very curated Pinterest type posts of like very cool interiors, and maybe the layperson doesn't know exactly how that would be achieved. The at least from what I have watched when it comes to YouTube videos about interior design, many people seem to believe that actually by having less going on, by having something that is more minimalist, you can actually achieve a more higher end, sophisticated, elegant type look. Something that you might see like on HGTV, for example, easier than you would be with more going on. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, I have kind of a theory about this. Basically, my mom is the type of person who would buy the live, laugh, love sign at Bed Bath and Beyond and put it on the wall. And that's not really design, that's decorating. And as an architect, I would consider decorating the lowest form of design. So then if you look at the other end of the spectrum, maybe that means the highest form of design is resisting the urge to decorate. Sometimes it's been described as like nesting. You buy a new home, you want to put stuff all over the place. But I think somewhere in the middle is really the correct answer. While minimalism is like the empty inbox of architectural styles, maybe sometimes it's nice to have a couple emails that you need to get back to in the inbox or something like that. But I would say in general, if you're going to clutter a room, you're going to detract from the focal points of the room. So if you have the right amount of balance, I think then the attention goes on the areas of the room that you should have. I don't know. I hope that makes sense.
No, it makes sense. I follow. So we're going to show in a second a project I think really encapsulates what you're talking about here. So you'll share your screen in a second. Is there anything, though, you want to talk about before we jump into that that could serve as better context?
Yeah, there's two other points I want to mention. I mean, we live in San Diego here, so getting the most usable space and the best bang for your buck, I really believe comes from using your exterior space in smart ways. It's much less expensive to have like an exterior patio or an exterior deck than it is to have a full extra room, like a bonus room. So it's dramatically less expensive to do this. And most people in San Diego want to have this interior exterior living scenario. So I think maybe now we're kind of going more towards designing exterior spaces like courtyards or pocket courtyards, things like that. I think that's how you stretch your dollar in a construction scenario where you're not really sure how expensive things are going to be. And the second thing I want to mention is there's a surefire way to beat these tariffs, and it would also be considered a sustainable design technique, and that would be to source local materials. So we make concrete in Oceanside, brick and block in San Marcos, and within Southern California, we're also making natural stone, drywall, and metal framing. So depending on what happens with the cost of wood framing, for example, you could see a shift towards metal framing. It's fire resistant. It's probably better for the environment. We would be doing less logging, so it could be arguably better for the environment. You could see a shift to more CMU block or concrete type structures, depending on really how high construction cost goes. These are locally sourced materials, and I think this is a good start for a lot of projects.
You mentioned sustainability. Where does energy efficiency perhaps come into the picture?
Good question. I guess that would be like an aside to this whole thing because the more you can save on your utility bills, the better off you would be. But that's in both economic scenarios. If construction cost is high and you save money on your energy bills, that's good. But also if construction cost is low and you save money on your energy bills, that's good. But the ways you're going to do this is probably solar panels out here in Southern California. The code requires solar panels on any new home and most new ADUs. So most of these homes are going to have solar panels anyway. And we have like the highest electric rates I think, in the whole country here with SDGE. And they just keep increasing their rates. So solar panels are a great idea. You can lease them, you can purchase them outright. We put some solar panels on our roof over here, and now our energy bill is basically zero, and we have an electric car. So that's a good, I don't think it's specific, but it's something you can do additionally to help you combat construction costs.
The one thing I've heard, at least, about the solar panels, especially in areas where the electricity is more expensive, like Southern California, apparently it becomes much more cost effective if you actually have a battery versus not having a battery.
Yeah, you need the battery now, unfortunately, because of the way SDGE has set up their plans. If you don't have the battery, it's not worth the cost of the solar panels. And that's actually disappointing because the battery is expensive. I mean, we just spent $35,000 on solar panels and a battery on a 2-bedroom house. So it's not a inexpensive cost. It would be much less expensive if we didn't have to install the battery, but you're forced to do it just because of the electric plans that are offered by the utility company.
The solar discussion could be a totally different, show in the future one day. So, unless there's anything you want to talk about, I think we're ready to look at this project. So I think this is going to be a very good example for people to consider and follow in the projects they may be considering.
Okay, so this is a good example of a project that is designed to be very simple and very low cost. This was an ADU project, and we built this in 2021. It's a 1 bedroom, 1 bath, and it's 2 stories. While it is an ADU, it's in the front of the property because the existing home was set back further than it needed to be. And this was a project that my wife and I designed, permitted, financed, built, and we even lived here for a little under a year. So we have a lot of experience around this project, and I can really tell you a whole bunch about this thing. So the first thing you're going to notice here is this is a minimalist home. You can do this with any style. It doesn't have to be minimalism. As you mentioned earlier, I'm a fan of minimalism. And we built this at $250 a square foot, although that was 2021 prices. So today, I think we'd probably be building this thing around 300 or 50 a square foot. But I should mention that we have lots of upgraded materials in this home. So I'll mention some of those. So the first thing you'll notice is this is a Santa Barbara stucco on the front. It's the most expensive stucco option you can have. You can do this with a fine sand stucco. It would look very similar and it would be a lot less expensive. The windows we have installed here, these are fiberglass windows. These are a mid-price point window. They're not a vinyl window. So we could have saved some money on that. If you're wondering about the Prince mural, this was a mural done by a local artist, Mario Torrero. He's the artist who's responsible for like 90% of the murals at Chicano Park. And we saved the mural and mounted it over here. Over here, we have an electric car charger. And you can see all of the runoff from the roof actually comes down this pipe here and waters an olive tree in the front. And we've maintained 2 parking spaces. Okay, let me show you here. So the entrance to this ADU is actually just around the side over here. If you were to come around the side and enter, you have this little overhang here, so it's weatherproof. You enter here, you have this tiny foyer space where we have a little coat closet. And you can go upstairs here, or you can go into the bedroom to the left over here, and behind this photo is the bathroom. I'll show you the floor plan in 1 second. So the materials here are, it's a concrete slab, which we've refinished, and that's the finished floor. The stairs are linoleum, which is a very easy material to install, so it's very cost efficient. You could actually install this yourself. You don't necessarily need a contractor to do it. All the lighting is LED, so it's very simple, very cost effective. So here's a view, just kind of turn to the left. You can see the bedroom. This is a reverse floor plan because there's only 1 bathroom in the house. So you have to make a decision whether the bathroom is going to be on the same level as the bedroom or the same level as the living room. So it was our opinion that the bathroom should be on the same level as the bedroom. And then the second thing that pushed us to do this reverse floor plan where the living room is upstairs is that we had a view of the Coronado Bridge since this home is in Logan Heights. So those 2 decisions led us to this reverse floor plan where the downstairs is bedroom, bathroom, and the upstairs is kitchen, living room. So you can see this is a level 4 drywall. That's also an upgraded finish. We didn't have to use the level 4 drywall. And we have Lutron switches. You could have actually used Leviton switches and saved some money there. And we have frameless doors also. That's an upgrade as well. This is the bedroom. So talking about using exterior spaces, this bedroom has a 5-foot by 10-foot courtyard. And this door system here is actually a 9-foot wide by 8-foot tall door system. It's the higher end of a Marvin door system. So it's a French door with a fixed panel. And I think that door alone cost about $12,000. It's probably the most expensive component of the house. We could have gotten a 6 or 7-foot wide patio slider for about $1,500 or $2,000. So there'd be like 80% savings on that system. And then this is just corrugated roofing that we used to create a privacy in this courtyard since we actually have 2 other units on this lot. And then this is just a oval closet hanging bar. And we've mounted these blackout curtains on this wall. So if you were to come back in the hallway and go into the bathroom, we have an IKEA cabinet here. We have the top mount sink, which is usually your least expensive way to do a sink. This is a Kohler medicine cabinet, which goes wall to wall. You could have saved some money and used the IKEA version of this. And then this is a Corian countertop. So basically, we could have saved money on the countertop. We could have saved money on the medicine cabinet here. There's a lot of areas where we could have saved some money. Let me show you what the upstairs looks like. So if you were to come up the stairs, this is that window that you see at the front. We didn't want the window to face the driveway because that would be awkward. So we faced the window towards the palm trees that we have in the front. And also you can see the flight path here. So you can see airplanes coming in about every 10 or 15 minutes. So we have the living room upstairs. The kitchen is to the right. We have a mini split here, which is also a cost save. The ceiling here, while it looks really cool, there's less expensive ways to do it. We actually used a finished grade plywood and then finished grade 2x12s. And then we have rigid foam on top of this with solar panels on top of that. And the lighting here is also fairly expensive. So we could have cut costs on all of these things, but yet we were still able to hit a price point of $250 a square foot, which again would be a little bit more today. Let me show you the floor plan here. And by the way, this floor up here is also a linoleum floor. So here's the floor plan. And when I talk about efficiency, I want to explain a couple things about this floor plan. So the first thing you're going to notice is the first floor plan here on the left, and in comparison with the second floor plan here on the right, there's basically no articulation. The building is built on a slab. We're 13.6 across here and 21 feet across in this dimension here. And the only exception is this entry, which is a little bit lower so that we don't have any water getting in here. But the walls basically go up 2 stories. The roof is pitched towards the back. We have aligned this 9-foot wide door system that I showed you in the photo earlier with this 9-foot wide window system, and that's where you're going to get the view out to the Coronado Bridge in the living room. This bathroom window here aligns with the kitchen window, and then we have this window here in the front. So all in all, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 windows, and then this door system. And you could argue that this is like one window. All these windows they come factory mold. So you're really trimming out, your contractor's trimming out 1, 2, 3, 4 windows and 1 door. So very efficient. Now let's take a look at the plumbing. So here's the kitchen. So we have our sink here. All the plumbing is tied right in here, and there's a dishwasher here. And then the bathroom is directly below that. So it's very efficient from a plumbing standpoint. We had originally designed this with the kitchenette in the bedroom, but we actually ended up nixing that midway through construction, which is also another way you can save construction. You can have construction cost. You can start to make decisions in construction that would not affect your permit if you need to. A couple other things that I want to point out here is the stair is a straight run. So this is going to be your most efficient staircase. And the joists just go from left to right, one span. There's a beam in here, but other than that, no other beams. Oh, we do have a header over this door system. I should mention that. And we do have a 9-foot header over this window. But other than that, it's very simple to build. There's really no articulation in the roof. It just goes from left to right, and that's it. And you can see that here. It's a very simple design, and I think that's what makes it really economic.
So in your opinion, is this minimalism as you view it, this design style?
I would call this, it's like minimalism on a budget. Yeah, it's like a cost-effective minimalism, or maybe a cost-effective modernism.
Got it. And just so to be clear, that was like ground up new construction, even though it's technically an ADU, right? But before that, there was no structure in place.
Yes, we just demolished a shed to do this, but it's ground up new construction, which in most scenarios is going to be your best bet, aside from maybe like a garage conversion, but those can be challenging because you never quite know what you're going to get into. But the principles are the same for an ADU, whether it's a small ADU or a 1,200 square foot ADU, or a custom home or a new home. It's the same principle. If you can keep the framing simple and condense the plumbing and mechanical systems, then everything's going to be easier to build, and that's going to drive costs down.
Well, from an interior design perspective, I like the all white walls, although a lot of people might not. But I think that automatically makes it look a lot higher end. And then also, I hadn't noticed it, although I had seen this before, I hadn't noticed it until you were just screen sharing. But the yellow staircase, I think, adds a very nice accent.
Yeah, so I guess one challenge we have as architects is color is really not our expertise. So most of the time, I'm trying to just use the color of the material. So the concrete floor is going to be gray. We're going to go with a white or black trim window in most scenarios. These are all neutral colors so far. We had the concrete floor, so we went with the concrete vessel sink to kind of match. And then there was some really cool details, which I didn't have in the photos, but the shower, for example, is actually a solid surface or a Corian wall. And then it's the same color as the drywall paint. So you can't really tell where the shower starts and where the shower stops. But that's an expensive way to do a shower. If you were to be on a budget, you'd be looking at a fiberglass shower.
And one last thing I noticed is that the vanity, I feel like that is a good example of how something more simplistic and minimalist can actually look more expensive. In that case, I know you said like it was, I think you might have said the vanity was IKEA. It kind of looks like something that's like a less expensive version of something that's very expensive, but still, I would say it looks a lot more expensive than it is, that gray vanity on the countertop.
Well, so the actual cabinet is IKEA. It used to be called the Godmorgan bathroom vanity. I think they've actually changed it now to they have a different version of that. And then the counter, the top, the counter is not IKEA. That's a solid surface. And we used the same solid surface in the shower. So there was an efficiency of material because that comes in like a 4x8 sheet and you pay per sheet. And then we were able to make the countertop in the bathroom out of the same material as the shower. So there's an efficiency there. And then the vessel, I think I ordered that on Etsy or something because they didn't have anything that was concrete like that at IKEA or anywhere else I could find. So I think it was just an Etsy order.
Cool. And then I also thought the courtyard was a very nice touch. Like if I had been living there, if that would be my bedroom, I would much rather have the courtyard, especially in San Diego, but really any climate, even if it's like the Northeast with the Four Seasons, as opposed to having more room but no outdoor space.
Yeah, and 5 feet I would say is the minimum size courtyard that you'd want. I mean, six would be much better, and if you had like 8 or 10 or 12, I mean, it's much better. But this was a very tight lot. The lot for just to like set the context here, the lot is 25 feet wide, 100 feet deep, so it's 2,500 square feet, which is considered a substandard lot. It's a multi-family lot, and we actually have 3 units. So there's 2 dwelling units, one ADU, which is the one I just showed you, and we also have room for 2 parking spaces. So the lot could not be designed any more efficiently.
In total, how much was it to design, build, and construct this project, if you don't mind sharing that?
I think the design was about 580 square feet when we completed the project. We built it at 50 a square foot. The goal was $200 a square foot, which would have been comparable to probably like 325 to $350 a square foot today. It cost us about $8,000 to $10,000 to permit the project in different fees. All those fees have gone up. The city has increased their fees like probably 8 times since we completed that project. And then, of course, since we're designing it for ourselves, we don't pay for the architecture or the permit facilitation because we do that in-house.
Got it. So, and then how much do you think you could have saved? Like, say, imagine if you were on like the tightest budget possible, because it seems like in many of the different decision points, you went with like the mid-range option for like the windows, for
Mhm.
example, versus you could have gone for a lower end option or a higher end option. So, if you really needed to say like the goal was to build it for as, cheap as possible, for lack of a better term, how much extra money do you think you could have saved in that scenario?
I think probably 20%.
Percentage is helpful considering the costs are all relative to yourself
Yeah.
at this point.
And Billy, let's just stop on windows here, windows and doors. So I would say windows and doors are the first thing you're going to want to upgrade if you want to spend more than like the bottom price point. Your first upgrade is your windows and doors. If you were to permit a project expecting to have like a higher end or mid price point window and door in your design, and then all of a sudden you end up in the construction phase and construction costs are higher than you expected, you can value engineer the project without affecting the permit. And you can shift from an aluminum window down to a fiberglass window or even down to a vinyl window. And that does not affect the permit. So there's like wiggle room after the permit is issued to adjust the construction cost. You just have to really work with your contractor to like dial in those numbers.
Wouldn't you say those decisions, though, come back to the project goals? So, for example, if you just want to rent it out, I know a lot of people will probably go with the lower quality, but if you're going to live
Mhm.
there, maybe you want to invest more.
Yeah, this is a good point. I mean, designing a home or an ADU for rental purposes is just like categorically different than if you were going to design a home or an ADU for yourself to live because you need to design the price point has to reflect the neighborhood. So when we're designing ADUs in Logan Heights, we're going to use vinyl windows. And if you were to design an ADU in La Jolla to rent, there needs to be some consideration about the quality of the windows because maybe a higher end window could command more rent. In some cases, it can't. So you may end up with the vinyl windows even in La Jolla. But if you're designing a home for you to live, you may want to consider aluminum windows because they're going to be naturally fire resistant. One more point on windows and doors. Those big door systems that everybody wants, those things are really expensive. While they're really cool, if you're looking to build something at a lower price point, I think maybe you would consider avoiding those. But you could also go through the whole permit process with a 20-foot wide door system. And then in construction, you can dial that back to a 10-foot wide door system. And that does not affect your permit because less glass means the home is going to be more efficient, and more wall means the home is going to be more structural. So you're not really affecting the structure or the energy calculations. So you can still make adjustments all the way into the construction phase.
And last thing here, I know obviously on that lot there's that Casitas Harrison home, which you were living in for a while. Um,
Mhm.
I know there are some regulations you talked about. I don't know if they're still current, about how you can build an ADU taller than your primary dwelling unit. Was that what happened here? Because I know the Harrison home is just one level, I believe. So,
Mhm.
but this one we just looked at is obviously two floors.
I guess we can dispel this myth right now. The ADU can be taller, larger, closer to the side yard setback, closer to the street, or even now in the front yard setback in comparison to the dwelling unit. So we have two dwelling units there. I think they're both about 500. One's 525 square feet, one's 575 square feet, and the ADU is 580 square feet. The dwelling units are 3 feet from the side property line. The ADU is 2 inches from the side property line. They don't allow you to do this anymore with a two-story ADU, but you could still do it with a one-story ADU. And then this ADU is about 22 feet high, and I think the other structures are about 16, 17 feet high. And as you can see, we put it right in front of both of those dwelling units. While we're talking about ADUs, there's maybe one more point I would like to make. If you are in a circumstance where you own a property that has an existing dwelling unit and you're considering a major remodel or maybe scraping and building a new home, you may want to consider just building an ADU instead because the fees are drastically lower for an ADU. So you can build a 1,200 square foot ADU, which could be a 3 bedroom, 2 bath home, and you're going to save, I mean, probably at least 50% of the fees that the city would charge you. So in some circumstances, that could be $15,000 or maybe even $20,000. So I guess that's another way you can save cost on your construction project by reducing administrative fees.
Interesting. And then you talked about there being many different creative use cases of the ADU, but that perhaps you could adaptively reuse your current home, the primary dwelling unit. For example, the Harrison home is, pretty small, I would say. It's one level. But for example, someone like you could live in the Prince house and then maybe, you own a business, of course. You could just convert the Casitas Harrison home into like office space and that would work. So,
You definitely could do this. So I like that train of thought. You could use the primary dwelling unit as a guest house. You could use it as a home office. You could rent it out. You could maybe Airbnb it if you get an Airbnb license. Although, in most cases, the most financially viable option is to rent it out as a dwelling unit rather than an office because office space rents for less per square foot.
we're running up on time here. What do you want to say to wrap up here, just in conclusion, and then also looking forward, how you're going to be advising clients to deal with this tariff situation and how that's going to impact projects in San Diego?
In conclusion, I would say we still don't understand how these cards are going to fall. We don't know if there are going to be tariffs, if there's not going to be tariffs. We don't know when they're going to happen. We don't know what materials or what countries they're going to affect at the moment. So I think it's just like a safe bet to plan for increased construction costs for the next, maybe 1 year, maybe 2 years or 3 years. But I don't think this should be a deterrent from starting your project today, because as I mentioned earlier in the video, if you were to start your project today, submit your project for permitting in 6 months, get your permit in a year to a year and a half, or at least complete all of the permitting in about a year and a half, we can just drag out that permit issuance until you're ready to start construction. And then you're really doing it on your time You're doing it leisurely and avoiding the stress of the process.
I know you also have these based on the Prince House layout and designs and floor plan. You also have a pre-approved ADU option based on the design we were just looking at. So, can you talk a little bit more about what that features and how this could be beneficial from a financial perspective as well?
Saving money on the overall project doesn't just include saving money on construction, but also saving money on the permitting. On the design, if you look at my portfolio and you find a project that you like, particularly the Prince House, because the Prince House was designed to be a universal design to fit most lots in San Diego, we can skip the design phase and go right into construction drawings and then right into permitting. So that's going to save you a lot of cost and time in the design phase and probably costs in engineering phase as well. So if you look at the Prince House on the website and you like it, shoot me an email and we can discuss how much it would be to use that for your project.
We'll link the portfolio, and then I know you also had a couple other videos produced of the property, so we'll also have that if people are interested. But you can also use that layout as a starting point for other revisions or other different design considerations based on people's wants, needs, property layout. So it's not like you just need to purchase that. They can be customized to a certain extent.
Hmm.
All right, awesome. So, Sean, is there anything you want to say before we wrap up today?
Just in general, start your projects. I mean, don't wait, start the projects, and then we'll figure out when to build the projects later on.
I think the thing to realize or to internalize is that with challenges come opportunities, you know? So
That's right.
there's always something that can be done, especially when it comes to property. I mean, even if you were to start a project in the middle of the 2008 financial crisis, you know, fast forward today, 2025, you would have still made a ton of money in the long term. So,
Hmm.
in terms of like net worth, at least in this particular scenario. So, in the long run, I think everything will be fantastic, quite honestly. So, I think we're all optimistic. It's just the short term might have some turbulence for sure, but
Hmm.
you know, that's just life. So, what can you do? But, all right. Thanks for watching, everyone. Subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying these chats. And we'll be back in like another 2 weeks or so with another topic to discuss. But until then, take it easy.